If you enjoy deep-cut military history and want more content like this, make sure you hit subscribe, because today we're stepping into a corner of World War II most documentaries never touch. There's a whole world of frontline survival that lived in the shadows. Things soldiers relied on daily but rarely recorded, mentioned or preserved. These weren't issued kit lists or tactical lessons. These were the items that kept men alive when supply lines failed, weather turned vicious, or the battlefield turned into a test of pure endurance. The unusual part is that many of these items still apply to modern survival in ways preppers don't always consider. So for the next few minutes, let's treat this like an off-the-record briefing between people who study history, not to romanticize it, but to understand the reality of staying alive. Why soldiers quietly carried improvised fire starters. One of the worst-kept secrets among veterans was that official matches often failed at the exact moment they were needed most. Cold, moisture, and manufacturing inconsistency turned them into unreliable luxuries. So soldiers in every theatre carried their own improvised fire starters. Wax-soaked cloth, resin collected from pine trees, even thin shavings of celluloid film that burned hot and fast. This wasn't something they talked about, it was simply done, a quiet insurance policy against exposure. Understanding this helps modern preppers rethink redundancy. In a long-term emergency, a lighter is a tool, not a guarantee. Learning to make a wax-cotton starter or keeping a small tin of resin in your kit mirrors exactly what frontline troops did. The value comes not from the object, but the confidence that fire doesn't depend on one piece of gear. Try creating a few starters at home, testing them in damp conditions, and storing them in separate pockets, just as soldiers kept theirs scattered across jacket, pack and boot tops. Why pocket-sized sewing kits were more critical than most weapons manuals. Nearly every soldier carried a tiny sewing kit, usually improvised. This wasn't about appearance, it was about life-or-death functionality. A ripped sleeve in winter Russia meant frostbite. A torn trouser seam in North Africa meant sand abrasion so severe it could lead to infection. A kit with 2 needles, a few threads, a button or two, and maybe a scrap of canvas solved problems that supply depots couldn't reach in time. For today's survivalist, this is a direct lesson in field longevity. Gear fails. Clothing rips. Stitching breaks down under rain, sweat and weight. A sewing kit isn't a quaint accessory. It's the difference between maintaining insulation, keeping structural support in your pack straps, and preventing minor issues from escalating. Practice repairing your own gear with cold hands and in poor lighting. World War II soldiers didn't wait until camp. They fixed problems the moment they noticed them, even mid-patrol. That mindset is worth copying. Why rations were useless without the unspoken currency of salt. Salt was one of the most universally hoarded items in the Second World War. Official rationing left meals bland, but more importantly, frontline exertion burned through electrolytes, and it happened fast. Soldiers quietly carried salt packets, scraped salt from preserved meats, or traded for it whenever possible. They didn't brag about this because, well, it felt trivial, but its absence meant muscle cramps, dehydration, and declining performance. Units marching for days needed every advantage, and salt was one of the simplest. Modern preppers often overlook salt because, honestly, we live in an era where it's cheap and everywhere. But in real emergencies, it becomes a stabilizer for both nutrition and morale. Add a small waterproof container of salt to your kit. Use it to make quick electrolyte mixes by combining a pinch with water and something sugary. Soldiers essentially practiced this in the field long before sports drinks existed. The principle hasn't changed. Why compact metal tins became improvised medical kits. One of the cleverest unspoken tools soldiers carried was a small metal tin, sometimes a tobacco tin, sometimes a candy tin. These became rugged micro-containers for items they couldn't afford to lose. Iodine tablets, morphine syrettes, alcohol swabs, spare dressings, even a tightly wrapped bandage strip. Medics weren't always nearby, and soldiers knew it. A tin kept the essentials dry and crush-proof. For practical prepping, this concept is, honestly, gold. Build a micro-medical kit that fits in a pocket separate from your main first aid bag. Include something for bleeding, something for infection, and something for pain. Test whether you can access it with one hand. Second World War soldiers organized theirs based on what they feared most: shrapnel, infection, and contaminated water. Your modern version should be just as intentional. Why ordinary cloth strips became the frontline's most versatile survival tool. Whether cut from undershirts, sandbags, or worn-out uniforms, cloth strips became multi-purpose tools soldiers never talked about but always used. They served as field-expedient bandages, cordage, weapon-cleaning patches, sling material, trail markers, and even water filtration pre-filters. Commanders didn't issue them. Soldiers made them and replenished them constantly because they solved everything from wound management to campcraft. This is one of the easiest Second World War lessons to apply today. Carry a few strips of tightly woven cotton or canvas in your kit. Use them to bind gear, pre-filter dirty water before boiling. Improvise a pressure bandage with a stone or rolled cloth, or secure broken equipment. The key is learning 10 ways to use one item, just as soldiers did. Take a weekend and rehearse making a sling, a tourniquet windlass, and a gear tie from a single cloth strip. It builds the same improvisational thinking Second World War troops relied on. These forgotten items reveal something important. Survival wasn't just about issued gear. It was about personal responsibility, small improvisations, and unspoken habits that kept men alive in chaos. If you found this deep dive useful, make sure you subscribe, share the video with another history or survival enthusiast, and stay tuned for more episodes here on The Prepper Historian.